All right, I'm John Shrek McPhee, the sheriff of Baghdad. Today, we're starting a monthly intel brief. Today, we got my buddy Brad. Brad's an old school ranger, ACO, right? You were ACO, right?
That's right.
I
Yeah.
remember you in ACO. Brad's an old school ACO ranger with me, right? And like same year, same era. Brad now does the Cypher Brief, and he does intel. And I talked to Brad the other day on the phone, and we just wanted to start trying to put out facts, right? Because if you're listening to this or watching this, you, you probably ain't watching the news like me because you know it's propaganda, right? So, Brad, go ahead and introduce yourself before we get into it.
Yeah, that's right. We were at ACO together a long, long time ago now, back in the 90s. And if I recall, I was usually pretty afraid to walk over on your side of the compound. There was screaming and yelling always going on over there. I was staying away from that side.
Yeah, hey, we were like the Delta House of all the companies at the barracks. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, hey,
When I had to park in the parking lot and I'd go all the way around. Like, I'm not coming by your place.
I was on CQ one night just sitting at the desk as like an E5 or something. You know, I had to just sit at CQ for the company. SDNCO walks up just to kind of check the barracks, right? Like a weekend night, someone shot at him.
Oh,
And then
it's
he's like,
bad.
this is your fucking barracks. You're going to find out who did it. I was like, okay. So I'm like, everyone's partying in the barracks. I'm like, hey. I was like, I don't even want to ask. I don't even want to know who. Someone just shot at the SDNCO. And like everyone just laughs. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
What
uh,
me?
a dude owned it,
Yeah.
but and then like nothing happened. It's the 90s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Remember the shootings like downtown Savannah, like those little like things that were
oh,
happening back then.
yeah, all the time, all the
It's
time.
crazy.
Well, I think crime now is worse than it was then. Like we caught up to then and
Yeah,
surpassed it. Like I think the world was going the right way for a long time.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we could talk Ranger stories all day. But, tell me about the Cypher Brief and kind of like how you got there, what you do now.
Yeah. So let's see, really quickly. After Ranger Battalion, I got out, went to college, went back in the military just before 9/11. 20th Group. Went through the first SFAS after 9/11. So October 2001, I was at Fort Bragg going through SFAS. Finished the Q course, went right to Afghanistan, pretty much from Fort Bragg in a strange turn of events. And then I stayed in that. I kind of got into the contracting world, and so I sort of double dipped, I guess, for a while doing that. Um, Ended up working up at Blackwater, and then as an instructor on the range, and then from there I kind of got into managing programs for the intelligence community, some contracts. Somewhere in there along, you and I reconnected, I think,
Yeah, for sure.
at an Uber group event out in Arizona, if I'm thinking, or Nevada. Yeah,
Well, I remember seeing you at one of these events and going, "Fuck, man, this guy looks familiar. Like I know
yeah,
this guy, but like." You know how, like, I don't know, through the war years, you meet so many people, so many places. You know,
yeah,
war takes bodies. Like, that's
yeah.
people, you're going to meet them, you're going to know in person, right? So
I was
I
just
was
talking
kind of
about that
thinking that. And,
yesterday. Yeah,
and then I think that one day, like, I was like, I think I asked you, I was like, I remembered you one day. I think I said, like, hey, did you used to wear you were an ACO and you used to wear birth control glasses, right?
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's what I said to you, and you were
That's
like,
right.
"Yeah, I did." And
Good
I'm
memory.
like, and then I don't even remember now what we did, but I hung out with you guys, ACO. Like I never went over. I never went on the backside by you guys either. Even though
Yeah,
we were the it was crazy where I lived. Like
yeah,
I didn't go fuck around in your guys' hood over there
yeah,
either, you know.
yeah,
But and then like we just started talking, and that's how we, you know. And I was like, yeah,
yeah.
you look familiar. And then it just kind of, I asked, like, hey, you an ACO? And you're like, yeah. I was like, birth control glasses back in the day, like, cause you know we
Small
both probably
detail I've
had.
tried to forget. But
Anyway,
you're right about just kind of faces blending together for me over the years. I
yeah.
run into guys and I'm like, oh no, like, nowadays I'm, kind of small business world. I'm usually so stressed I can't remember how to open the car door. But it's like, oh, where do I know you from? And then I have to go back is like all the way through the 90s, forward. But um, well, Cypher Brief. So I was in DC kind of working on programs, and I met Suzanne Kelly, and she told me about an idea that she had to create a new type of media company that focused on national security. I was like, cool, that sounds like good luck. Um, and then about a year later, I was in a pretty good position, kind of looking around to make a change. She said, hey, why don't you come to work for me? And at the time, I was like, never in a million years would I see myself working in a media outlet ever. Like, stay away from reporters, stay away from the news. I didn't understand. I couldn't tell you the difference between an op-ed or what a reporter does or any of this stuff. Open source intelligence, I don't know any about. So we just kind of kept chatting, and I ended up giving it a try for about a month. I was just going to go over and consult. Actually, really enjoyed it. It was a good team, small business, and so I kind of stuck on to that role. And I started learning about the news business. And what we do is a little different. All we do is focus on national security. Suzanne founded the company. She was a CNN intelligence correspondent. She was in the traditional news media for her whole career, but she was the CNN intelligence correspondent, worked up in DC, and really got fed up with the way that mainstream news and cable TV news dealt with issues like national security topics. Really serious things. You need context, you need expertise, and a lot of the times the mainstream news just sort of, I've heard it described as they treat it like a jump ball. Nowadays, it's a little different because it's really important. There's a lot of threats, there's a lot of technological changes. National security is a little bit more well understood, but when she started the Cipher Brief, really no one cared that much about national security. She said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to recruit real experts that they're going to act as contributors, and all the Cipher Brief is going to do is focus on national security. And so that's what we do. We have about 100 folks, many retired generals, former directors and deputy directors of CIA, NSA, folks that come from Capitol Hill, folks that come from across the intelligence community, the national security world, the military. Recently had some special operations officers that retired and are contributing with us. Lieutenant General Bob Ashley, former director of the DIA. So that just gives you a flavor of the kind of people that we talk to kind of help bring perspective on some of the issues of the day. And, our slogan, one of our slogans is kind of like, what happens, we're going to tell you what it means a little bit. So we produce analysis that we publish on a website on things like North Korea, Iran, terrorism, cyber, and now, of course, what everyone's focused on is the war in Europe. So that's kind of what we do. I'm now the chief operating officer of the Cypher Brief, so I kind of wear two hats. I do a lot of the normal day-to-day business stuff that comes with running a small business that you know very well, and then I've gotten a lot more involved on some of our editorial things. So I'll do some interviews, occasionally write things I've never thought I'd find myself doing. I'll stop in a second, but my one rule when I told Suzanne I'd come to work over there was like, okay, I'm never going to interview anybody. Like, can't make me a reporter. And I think that lasted about 2 weeks, and I had to interview General Breedlove, four-star general, retired Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, and I was kind of a little bit, intimidated, and I'm like, how am I gonna interview a general? And it was a little rough. I didn't come as prepared as I should have, and so, but now it's pretty smooth. So proud of what we do at the Cypher Brief, and really excited to join your show here and talk about some things.
Yeah. Well, we talked the other day, right? Hey, for you guys watching or listening, I talked to Brad the other day, and I get hit all the time like, what news do I watch? Because I tell everybody, I believe we are in the biggest propaganda war in the history of mankind. I believe almost nothing you see about Ukraine is actually real or true, or if something did happen, this may have happened, but these ain't the details that led up to it, right? So
Yeah.
as we talked the other day, it was like, where do you just hear the facts? Like, how we get here? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because I know, like, look, and with Ukraine, right? And I'll talk about Ukraine for a second. With Ukraine, people are always like, well, the Ukraine government's corrupt, Putin's corrupt, and it's like, so are we,
Yeah.
and so is the world, and so is the biggest propaganda machine ever created. Our fucking news, like, and we're supposed to just trust this, or you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's holes in the game. All that COVID conspiracy stuff a year ago, oh, it's all true. It's not conspiracy anymore, right? So when we talked the other day, for you guys listening, right, and I asked Brad to just, every one of these podcasts, give us 10 minutes of like, no shit, so what, like, what's going on in the world, right? So
Yeah.
Brad, give us the no shit, what's going on in the world.
Yeah. So I'll preface this a little bit by saying one of the things that we do, we realized a while ago that there was a need for people to do just what you said, follow the facts. So we had our team come up with a concept where every night we just grab together stories that have been reported in the news. Now, these are not things these aren't segments on TV. These are what reporters in the field, whether it's Ukraine, Asia, Iran, the Middle East, writing reports about what happened. So we collect that, we curate it. It's only national security. We publish it in our newsletter every day. And now these are stories that are being reported in the press. We don't add on any commentary to this. We're just telling you what's happened. I will say off the top, it takes a lot of effort to stay informed nowadays. This is one of the lessons I've learned coming to work at the Cypher Brief. You got to stay on these stories and follow the issues.
Look, if you turn it off, you're not informed,
Right.
right? And that is not a good place to be. If
Yeah.
you watch it all the time, you're misinformed, and that is
Right.
not a good place to be. So, this is why I wanted to do this. I don't know where
Yeah.
that middle is, but I want to be in the middle if there is a middle, or I want to
Yeah.
help guys find that middle, because I just, honestly, man, I just won't watch. Like, you know what I mean? And how many nights in Iraq or Afghanistan, and you know this just like me. You know what I mean? We have the most successful capture, raid, whatever mission in the fucking task force year, 2 years. And then, you turn on CNN and it's like baby milk factory bombed in Baghdad today.
Yeah.
Film at 11. Like, there's no fucking baby milk, motherfuckers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I learned, like, in probably by '02, like, the news ain't what really happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right.
Fuck, we're in the
It's
middle.
a complicated world nowadays with the technology being what it is. You have disinformation campaigns or misinformation campaigns on top of it. It's very complicated. Let me give you a quick rundown.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing right now, I was going back 1 week, and these are stories that we've shared with our readers and subscribers in our newsletter.
So
This is just 1 week.
This is 1 week in April of 22.
1 week in April. So this starts on April 18th, 2022. Um, we reported the big story of that day was Chinese Air Force had for the first time flown its new J-20 stealth fighter in routine patrols in the South and East China Sea. Significant because the J-20 had on board a domestically produced Chinese engine. The J-20 and the US F-35 are the only two fifth-generation fighters that are currently deployed at squadron level. But interestingly, the J-20 actually has a more thrust than any other fighter pilot or fighter jet in the world. The US F-22 was designed to be sort of the air dominance fighter jet. They're going to have to scrap that and come up with a new design, which is reportedly in the works. But the J-20, which is China's fifth generation air dominant platform, is in service at squadron level. That was the big story from Monday. Tuesday, we reported that arrests of migrants at the U.S. southern border had topped 1 million in 6 months. It's a new all-time high. Um, let's see, 200,000 people were arrested in March alone. Those guys are very busy down there. Also at play is a decision that President Biden is considering to drop Title 42, which was a President Trump era policy, which allows Customs and Border Patrol to send people quickly back across the border. So if that gets dropped, it's going to have an
Right.
impact on that
Hey,
down there.
more people than ever in a shorter amount of time, and then we're not going to have a quick exfil for them. That
Right.
sounds like a recipe for a humanity disaster. Good job.
Tensions are only going to get higher down there.
Tensions are only
Also,
getting higher. That's funny.
also
Well
on
said.
that day, um, also on that day, another big story. It first came out that the U.S. military was preparing to train Ukrainian forces on how to use American 155 howitzers. Now, if you think back to the start of the Ukraine war, there was no mention of any U.S. training that was going on. In fact, they were saying we're not going near that. So as you kind of watch the ramp up of tensions, of escalatory type actions. So we were first reported on Tuesday that the U.S. military is going to be training Ukrainians. We'll have a little bit more on that. Um, Also on Wednesday, this might be an interesting one for you. This was a report by the New York Times that said armed groups are on the rise in Colombia. Again, despite a peace deal in 2016 signed between the Colombian government and the FARC, reports are that there's armed groups are on the rise in the jungle again. Not really a lot more detail on that, but just wanted to pay attention to. Also on that same day, Finland signaled its strongest signal yet that it's going to make a formal bid to join NATO. 60% of Finland's population now supports the measure of joining NATO. Certainly, along with Sweden, that's going to have an impact in the region that we don't yet know how that's going to play out. On Thursday, Vladimir Putin oversaw the test of a new Russian missile, reportedly called the Satan II. He says it has no equivalent anywhere in the world and can defeat any modern air defenses. Friday, President Joe Biden told reporters that he had approved an additional $800 million in US military aid to Ukraine. Included in that were 72 howitzers and 100 tactical drones. On Monday, so that was Friday, so that was last week. Today, or starting this week, on Monday of this week, we saw U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. A lot of questions about how these world leaders continue to roll into Kyiv, seemingly, under no fear of threat of attack by Russia while they're there. Austin announced additional money towards Ukraine. Blinken said U.S. diplomats are going to start going back into the country on onesies and twosie kind of trips. And then today, I'll close it off with today. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin kicked off a meeting in Germany with 40 other countries where, interestingly, he has said he believes that Ukraine can win this war against Russia. Whether or not you believe that's true, the fact that the Secretary of Defense said that on the record to the press is significant. And that comes as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview on state TV in Russia that the risk of this conflict in Ukraine escalating into World War III is rising, and nuclear conflict is considerable. The risk of nuclear conflict is considerable. He says that NATO is, in essence, in a proxy war with Russia. And I'll close with an interesting one. I know you'll find this one interesting. Reuters reporters say that the stockpiles of U.S. Stinger missiles, the supply chain is under pressure. That we've sent almost 1,500 Stingers to Ukraine, and we don't have the ability to quickly ramp that production up. I was telling Suzanne earlier this morning, I remember in 1992 being on a Stinger team training, And the technology hasn't really changed a lot since those early days. U.S. military has a really a limited utility to use those stingers. We don't use them in the way that Ukraine uses them, obviously. And so the supply chain for stingers is being constrained a little bit. I thought you'd find that one interesting.
Hey, did you jump the 6x6x6?
I did not get to jump it. I did not get to jump that thing.
They're like, hey, we're gonna jump these, and as a private, I was like, cool. I got a 6x6, 6 feet long, man.
Yeah.
I had to jump
I,
that big piece of wood. Like that's just, oh no, they're too expensive. We don't want you to break it. It's
I
just like,
think I think the transition with ACO to the Jeep and bike thing was going on. I skipped having to jump that massive thing, which I was all right with.
yeah. Oh, I had fun the entire time till you made me do that, and then I was just mad about it, and I lowered that motherfucker early. Like I
Yeah,
was like, Ruck is gone early. Get this fucker off me.
yeah,
All right, let me ask you
yeah.
this.
All
I've
right.
been thinking about this, right? And look, we're about the same age, same group, same, nuclear war, right? When we were kids, I was under desks in a hallway.
Yeah.
Okay. Height of the Cold War, scale of 1 to 10, how close you think we came to nuclear war? And I know this is your opinion, but I'm just kind of asking you. I'll tell you my opinion. And then I'm going to ask you another question.
Based on what I've read and studied, I'd say we were probably at a 9 at one point for a risk of nuclear war with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I've heard people much smarter and wiser than me talk about the fact that America really doesn't understand how close we came in that specific incident. I'm sure there's other things off the books that may have happened with the tension was high, but I feel like it was pretty high.
What would you say the average number through the whole length of the Cold War was on a scale of 1 to 10?
It's probably got to be a lot lower, I would think. I'd say 5. I don't know.
I
There was
100% agree with everything you said, and I would have gave the same numbers. Okay, let's say 2000, scale of 1 to 10. How close to nuclear war in 2000?
what, a 2? I don't
Yeah.
even think anyone was thinking about it.
What about now?
That's the question everyone's asking. So part of the report today where Sergei Lavrov made those comments, the UK Armed Forces Minister, and I can't remember his name right now, came out and said, um, bravado. It's just bravado. The UK doesn't assess that the risk of nuclear war is going up. Where I think we're headed is if you look at the tit for tat move and the escalatory actions, there's some truth to say that we're in a proxy conflict with Russia. I personally feel like we're closer to war than anyone's admitting right now with Russia. The question then becomes, can we engage in any sort of a kinetic action without it immediately going nuclear and we're all going to die? That seems to be sort of the rhetoric. Um, I've had I've had conversations with people who significantly outranked me in the military that say it's possible. We could do a limited engagement with Russia and not let it go completely nuclear. Most people, I don't think, believe that. I think most people think if we get involved with a Russian military engagement, it's going to go nuclear. The wild card here is what the hell is Russian President Vladimir Putin going to do? Like, what's in his head? That's what no one knows. I feel confident that we're not going to push us into nuclear war, but I don't know how far Putin is willing to go here. And you look at some of the tactics that we see playing out in Ukraine, it's a head scratcher that we're seeing this kind of warfare in 2022 to begin with. So I personally don't feel like I'm that worried about nuclear war right now on Tuesday. But the way the world's going now, John, I don't know how that's going to be next Tuesday. So I don't know. If I had to put a number on it, I'm going to say we're at a 4 or 5, but I don't know.
I feel like I agree with your numbers when we were kids, 100%. I already said that. I think we're at like a 7 right now. And I think Kiev is at a fucking 9 plus.
I can't imagine being there right now, just with the tension that they're, yeah, I mean, so here's the scary thing. If what Lloyd Austin said is true, and if enough people believe that Ukraine could actually win, which is not something I would have predicted, before this thing started, that is going to have a big impact on Vladimir Putin. Like, he's not going to let that happen for sure. So, does he go nuclear if they continue to suffer losses in Ukraine? I think there's the real risk. And then what would we do?
I gotta be honest, I don't feel like our government has made really solid decisions long term that would help everybody in a very long time. So any any bad situation, we're gonna be fucked because we don't have good leadership because we elect fucking assholes.
It certainly, it
Let me just say
certainly
that.
seems, you know, I for one am, and this is my Brad's opinion now. Like, I'm just tired of we let things get so bad and then we start trying to back into solutions. And, that's the way it's always been with our country. And I
Yep.
think I look back, I think it was Winston Churchill back in World War II, who it's the quote's attributed to him. He says, the United States can always be counted on to do the right thing after it's exhausted every other option. That seems to be kind of how we let these things happen. There's been a number of people that have talked about we should have done more early on to push back against what we saw was a buildup of troops in Ukraine. Maybe that could have achieved some deterrence. One person that I have a lot of respect for, General Phil Breedlove, he's a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He said a number of times on the record, we lost deterrence. Vladimir Putin has deterred the West in this situation. We need to figure out a way to get that back. That's the what thing that's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think for me it's I believe we funded the Nazis that have been going after Russians in Donbass. And I believe us fucking around and doing that, maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But if we did pay for that, right, that was Putin's biggest point of getting into this is Crimea and protecting Crimea from the Nazis, right? And if you look in, who funded the Nazis, right? And then when you look into that, like, I understand Putin's point of we are habitual fucking line steppers. We'll draw a line and we'll walk right over it. No, that line was for you. I didn't draw that line for me, right? I know. All right, we'll draw a new line and then we'll step over that motherfucker, right? So it's like, every 4 years we forget what happened the last 4 years and we start over. And Putin's been around for how long? Going, wait a minute, I'm tired of you guys fucking me over. Now, I think Putin's fucking a very smart man. I think he could be so smart he's borderline batshit crazy as he gets older. Maybe that happens to people. It's legit, and that's what fucking scares me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're not totally fucking lily white in this either. You know what I mean?
What's interesting, and I'll avoid for now commenting on the Nazi part. I don't have enough current personal information on the ground. What I will say, I feel like my view of Vladimir Putin before Ukraine and after Ukraine has changed dramatically. Again, this is Brad's opinion. I think I used to feel like Putin was a master strategist and 7 degree chess player and all that. I feel like what we've seen now is something that Putin actually didn't want. He didn't want NATO increasing military on his borders. He didn't want the US and Europe aligned. So I don't know how this plays out. I feel like Putin's gotten himself into a bad situation, and these people that are now talking about we need to give him an on off or an off ramp from this war. I think more people are starting to think along those lines. I will say, just as an American military person, it's difficult to watch how this war is being played out. I mean, we're we're certainly not perfect, American military, but man, it's difficult to see like this level of destruction in 2022. That's just a
Hey,
personal opinion.
this is World War II war.
Yeah,
And I mean, think about this. You know, how many times like we would go plan a mission, capture, kill, all for the right reasons after a real legit bad guy, and we get told no because of the optics or something, how it would play out in the media. Well, I'm going to tell you this. It doesn't make a fuck because Putin don't give a fuck. And if you
yeah,
don't give a fuck, they'll stop reporting on it.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, this is World War II fucking warfare. Well,
And
I
I've been
hope the
saying for a while, like I feel like we in the West and America, we've misused the word war for the last 20
100%.
years. And
100%.
what we're seeing now is actual war. And
Dude,
it's, you know,
I've been saying this for a long time. The soft enemy concept. We've been going in the villages, killing goat herders and their fucking kids for while we were fucking around with goat herders. These guys were working on hypersonic shit, in my
yeah,
personal opinion,
yeah,
right? But uh this is fucking baited us into it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and so here we are thinking we're the greatest ever, right? And we try to do all the right things. We try not to kill innocents, right? And then, but really, what we're doing is more police work, right?
yeah,
Remember my last, like, I don't know, man. Like, it was like we had to gather evidence. Like, we need evidence for the Iraqi court. Like, that's my job now. Like, what the
yeah,
fuck?
yeah,
But like, we did it. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
we have definitely misused the term war fucking for sure, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that.
I think, the older I get, the more I probably see the world a lot differently now than I did when I was 20, obviously. And I I see the insanity of all sort of leadership and policies that drive us into these areas. I mean, for years, people have been warning Europe about dependency on Russian energy. For years, Russia and Putin has been doing things that we didn't respond to. And for years, we have been focused on areas that we're now desperately trying to catch up. You just mentioned hypersonics. That's one. Cybersecurity, AI, these are all areas where plenty of people say China's in front of us right now. That's not something, the US military certainly can allow to happen, and our doctrine requires overmatch and that we maintain technological supremacy. These are some of the most incredibly complicated issues that the world's ever seen. So, on top of what's going on in Ukraine, we've got some really complicated issues that we need to catch up on. And, certainly, it's going to determine a lot of what our military does in the next decade, but also our way of life. At the end of the day, I think I do still want a world that's dominated by America and to a lesser degree Europe. I don't want a world dominated by China or Russia. I don't trust them a whole lot more than I don't trust our own government. I guess that's where I come down, in the end of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think we should have kept, look, we go into Afghanistan, we should have kept the fucking Bagram. We should have kept
Yeah.
both. Hey, we'll give you your country back, but we're keeping this base and a perimeter
One
around it.
of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. I know you
Dude,
feel the same way.
100%. Like, you know what I mean? We go into these countries as like, we did it for the oil, but we don't take any oil or money from
Yeah.
them. Matter of fact, we pay them. And then what the fuck are we doing, right? And then, but this isn't just us. Is the world has gotten so. Look, I call this they call it the longest peace since World War II. This is the longest peacetime in human history, man.
Yeah.
Right? So we've lulled ourselves. We don't even have to bear the heat. I got the AC on, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm drinking my Thai tea, pinkies out today, right? Like we have gotten so comfortable with these cushy lives that in America we forget there's fucking bad people that will just kill fucking everyone.
Yeah.
Not like, well, they killed somebody. No, they'll wipe out fucking everyone. Tens of hundreds of thousands, millions of people. They don't care, right?
Yeah.
And we lived in this fucking protective bubble where you could have purple hair, you could be a unicorn, you're not a dude, you're not a chick, who the fuck knows what you are? Do whatever
Yeah.
you fuck you want, no one cares, right?
Yeah.
Until the world's gonna crash. And then fucking what? Now you see what we were trying to protect you against all along. I
Yeah.
don't understand why none of these countries still think strategically. All their
Yeah.
resources should be thought through strategically. Like, look, the world could go to shit tomorrow. How do we feed ourselves? Number one,
Yeah.
we look out for us first. We should be making our own shit, looking out for us. If we could help the less fortunate, we should help them. But, you know, we shouldn't be giving we paid China to one day take over the planet because we were
Yeah.
too fucking lazy to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. That's
Or
where I think
we wanted it, we wanted iPhones cheaper, and we wanted
right.
profit margins higher.
Right.
And I think we're realizing now the mistake of offshoring everything. I'll tell you something else. We recently did a session at the Cypher Brief. It was a virtual Zoom meeting with some of our subscribers. On that session, we had two former senior intelligence officials and two former senior special operations officers. And one of the most interesting points that they all kind of came to was the United States is just not good at competing. Like, we were specifically talking about gray zone activities and Iranian cyber and what some of Russia's done in the gray zone, and just saying like the US absolutely has no ability to compete in the gray zone in the way that our adversaries do. And that kind of drew into a larger conversation. And I haven't stopped thinking about it since, because it's kind of true. I just think the hubris of our country, the success, the as far away as we are from a lot of the threats, we're surrounded on two sides by an ocean. We've just gotten lazy, and we're just clueless as to the way the world works, which I think is
Right.
kind of what you were going to right there.
And we're still trying to get rid of guns at a time where people are buying more guns and ammo than fucking ever. I mean, look, 1995, Ukraine, after Helsinki Accords, they give up their nukes. They should have armed the population and had a Second Amendment. Think we'd be here?
Yeah.
Fuck no.
Yeah. And now no one's gonna ever give up nukes. We're not talking anymore about the denuclearization of North Korea, right? That
No.
word's gone away. Now we have to deal with a nuclear North Korea and
Right.
everyone else, right? No
Right.
one's gonna give up their nuclear weapons
Oh,
anymore.
in the threat of nuclear war, it's fuck you. I bet the Ukraine is fucking thinking we should have never signed that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and then why would you sign a fucking non-nuclear agreement with fucking Russia?
Yeah. It's changed everything. This war in Europe, I think, has changed everything. It's going to ultimately be, I feel, more significant by a long shot than 9/11 was. And look at what 9/11 did to rechange doctrine, how we fought, how we organized. This is going to dominate U.S. military doctrine and strategy for the next 20 years, I
Let's
think.
hope.
Yeah.
Because the fucking Afghanistan doctrine of fucking goat herder fucking bullshit, that's not even doctrine.
Well, this is really what we're doing at the Cypher Brief too. To your point there, just you mentioned guns. I feel like it's regrettable that the way that the mainstream media in our country sort of always keeps people at each other's throats mostly around issues, take your pick: immigration, guns, abortion, politics. You can take those four things. And there's usually some media outlet that's just doing their level best to inflame one side or the other and keep people focused on those things. What we're trying to tell people at the Cypher Brief is, listen, forget all those things, not forget, but don't obsess about these things that are always going to be highly politicized, things that, frankly, you can't do a lot about. I mean, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently who was upset about something that President Biden said on guns. I was like, hey, listen, have some patience. Like, don't expect a Democratic president to do things that are favorable to the Second Amendment. That's crazy. Like, he's not going to do that. But our politics change pretty frequently in this country. So, pretty soon, your guy will be in, and things will be, Democrats will be worried about how a Republican president's not paying enough attention to climate change, right? Like, these are just natural political things that are going on in the country. What we're trying to say at the Cypher Brief is focus on some bigger threats. Look at what's going on with China. like the competition between the US and China. Like that's going to have significant impact on all of our lives if we don't get that right. We need to hold our leaders accountable on things that I feel like most Americans say we don't have to worry about that. Like I don't have to worry about what goes on in the intelligence community or cybersecurity or with the military. The experts got that. Well, they don't. And so we do need to focus more on what's going on in national security topics.
Man, I completely agree. I also think Taiwan's going to go down here soon. Like, if I was China, now's the fucking time.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
The world
Yeah.
don't care about Asia. The world only cares about Europe.
Yeah.
I
And
bet
we've
it'd be
and
a
we've been so
fuck
used we've been so used to dropping soft special operations in on problems and having these pristine outcomes, usually having these, very sort of we dominate everything we do in the US military. We're getting into some different spheres now. If you talk about the US military trying to deploy on the far side of the world and counter a military threat against Taiwan, that's a significantly different issue. And I think more people need to realize how dangerous the world is right now.
I couldn't agree more. That's why I think that number for a nuclear war is pretty high right now.
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, think about this. China right now is building a transcontinental highway through Afghanistan, Tajikistan, to Russia, to that's going to change the equation, right? That's going to
yeah.
change everything for the Middle East as well. Like, I don't know. I just feel like we've lived it
And keep
long. Yeah.
keep in mind, China, you want to talk about COVID, China, they are locking people into their homes and apartment buildings right now. This is a world that China's, they look, we have COVID outbreaks. We're gonna weld steel fences around apartment buildings. That's China.
Yeah.
Like that's I don't want a world dominated by China. I
I,
want I want a better America. I want better leaders, like you just mentioned. But I do not want a world dominated by China. I want us to win in that competition.
a dominated world by America is a safer world, and it's been happening for years. And as soon as we fuck around and we play stupid games, this shit happens, right?
That's
Like,
right.
like we need to relook at how we throw fucking money away across the planet. Also, oh, you're not gonna do shit for us? Oh, you're not going to get your $38 billion for no fucking reason. You're not going to get your $25 million for gender studies when
Yeah.
you don't even let girls go to school in your country. But what the fuck ever, right?
Yeah.
We need to also look at that money and giving these fuckers money. And hey, look, okay, don't give them money, or do give them money, or how about let's be friends? Not I just fucking pay you and you rip me off.
Yeah.
Should be fair, right?
Yeah. We need
That's
to
the way.
get smarter about how we're competing in the world, I think. And not, another thing is like I don't want to be embarrassed about saying, "Hey, I'm an American. And this is what we believe." We were too many years we were in fact at times ordered, when we were downrange. Don't say this, don't say that. We're super concerned about spreading American values.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I
I think it's
I
time we spread them.
hide that you're a Christian. Like, most fucking people in the States are. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't my choice, it's my parents' choice. I didn't, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. We need to look, if you want to win at anything, you got to run your own fucking game. I say this all the time, and I do this all the time, right? I'm not looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Why? I wouldn't win my race. I'm not running my race if I'm worried about them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I ain't doing that, right? And I think if you're gonna win, you got to treat people fair. You got to make good deals, right? You can't, and I also think like, look, China, Russia, they're gonna continue to do whatever they could to rape the planet. I also think before Ukraine was going down, why aren't we linked up with Russia? Why wouldn't we help Russia? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't we help the Russian economy and the Russian people? Think about this. Throughout history, right? Russia's been the bad guy, but what if what if us and Russia ran the planet? No one would have more resources,
Mhm.
right? The Chinese would be irrelevant.
Yeah.
So like, why wouldn't we be friends with Russia? And then why wouldn't we be friends with the Chinese? Matter of fact, can't we all just get a fucking along? It's 22. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
when, look, we just authorized piracy. It's fucking 22.
Yeah.
We authorize piracy. I just think like, we're going to have to be, this is what I learned. Look, I was one of the first guys to go out alone. You know this, right? What I learned is we needed to be a lot fucking smarter if we were going to catch these guys. And then from that, you know what I mean? Because we just thought we're just going to go out and raid these targets. And like, no, man, no, you want to figure this shit out. You're going to have to be fucking smart and make good moves and, shit like that. So, we're going to have to be smarter
and strategic.
And if we're going to be smarter, I was also, okay, we elect a moron once in a while. Meh, no big deal. It could happen, right? Like, no big deal, right? And I always, through the years, a younger me thought, all these agencies, the people that do the work, are going to have the good information and they're going to tell the boss this, and the boss is going to make the right decision. But what we're seeing is in the FBI and all that is no longer a true statement, because all that political elite bullshit has filtered down through the top ranks now, right? And I'm not sure I'm not sure how any of that pans out, right? So are we going to make a good decision on this now if the people who are actually doing the work are politically aligned with the person that wants anything particularly, right?
Yeah. Again, I think, this is why we at the Cypher Brief, we have a new phrase that we coined this year. National security is everyone's business, period.
Oh, totally,
so we need more people paying attention to these issues, holding our leaders accountable in different ways. And, and I put the news media in there as well. They wield such influence over many people. So we're on a mission to educate people across the board on all these things so that, we can get ourselves to a better place.
Awesome. Oh, hey, let's wrap it up on that. Tell everybody where they could find the Cypher Brief, or give a shameless plug here. Shameless plug.
Yeah. You can go, you can find everything we do at our website, and it's the cypherbrief.com, and Cipher is spelled Cipher. So the cypherbrief.com, you can sign up for a free newsletter. You can check out some of our events that we have coming up. And we have a podcast where we do this Monday through Friday every morning. We just kind of talk about quickly national security news roundup. So folks can check that out, and the cypherbrief.com.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Thanks, man. And
this is awesome.
Yeah. Hey, next month, right? We'll do this again. We'll, guys, if you're listening, go to the Cypher Brief and find out what's going on in the world without fucking some college kid who knows how to do commas better than you, whose opinion on something they know nothing about.
That's right.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, thanks,
John. This is awesome. Thanks for having me on. I love the show.
Yeah. Hey, round of applause. All right. Hey, until next month, I'll see you again, man.
Thanks.